What's going on, PGM fam? Welcome back to another episode with the Power of a Growth Mindset. Today, we are joined by another special guest here on the show, Mr. Jerome J. Sanders. Jerome is an influential entrepreneur at Cisco who is a leader as a senior product marketing manager within Outshift, the incubation hub at Cisco. He's deeply invested in public service, chairing the first tech fund to support underserved students, and he's acting as a United Nations Global Compact Young Sustainable Development Goal innovator with a vision to connect the next billion internet users by 2030. Jerome is also a Santa Clara University alumnus coming from the West Coast and has a huge passion for merging business, technology, and community impact. But in his free time, he's not only an international traveler, but he's also training for some Ironmans. Jerome, welcome to the show.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I'm ecstatic to be here with both of you. I have a lot of respect for the podcast, and again, truly humbled to be here with both of
For
you.
sure, man, for sure. Well, first off, I know you mentioned you've listened to the show, and as you know, with this platform, especially with many of the brothers that come through, mental health is important, and we are moving into some warmer weather, and so it's important to do a check-in with one another. So we want to start off the show with you, and ask you, man, like, how are things going? I know you got a lot going on, but like mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, how are you doing today?
Thank you for asking. I think it's such an important question for us to ask one another. I would say that I'm in a season of growth, and I feel um, very happy to be in the position that I'm in. I truly do feel as though I'm better than I deserve, is the best way that I can describe it. I think on the professional front, I have quite a few amazing things that are in development. On the personal front, I know, Josh, I'll just throw in a little quick plug. I know in about 9 days, you and I will be competing in Puerto Rico at the upcoming 70.3 Ironman. So that's honestly where a lot of my time and energy has been outside of work and outside of family time. And with that training comes a lot of hyper focus, being disciplined, which carries over very well into different aspects of my life. So overall, I think I'm doing fantastic. Obviously, there's days that are trying, and then other days that are really good. But overall, I'm feeling like I'm in a good spot. I'm feeling confident going into Puerto Rico. I'm excited to see my family after not having seen them for some time, really prioritizing this training. But again, super excited to be here with both of you.
Well, we
Welcome,
received that.
welcome.
Welcome.
This man out here running a
um,
whole Iron Man.
hey man, well, Jerome, you just touched on focus, and how not only just your day to day, but even the Ironmans. We've talked about this a little bit on the platform, like what's required and the time that it takes to like pour into something like this. And I've heard a little bit of your story. You come from a military family, and you've spoken a little bit of how that has impacted you. And so what we want to do as we start this conversation off is we want to kind of take a little bit of a layer back, take that step back. And we want to ask you, like, what has that experience been like? And how has that experience throughout your childhood molded you into the person you are today?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'd say that first and foremost, I have a deep, profound respect for the military. I think all too often people just see movies and think that it's one way, but when you've grown up in a family led by two military veterans, you know that there's a lot of sacrifice, dedication that goes into that, both for them as people serving our country, but then also for the family, right? You know, having parents that are away for years at a time and having to communicate via email and at some points not being able to communicate at all. So as you can imagine, the importance of connection to community, the importance of diversity, the importance of being able to navigate ambiguity, all of those things have been instrumental parts of my life. And is the reason why I've been able to move from San Diego to the Bay Area and to now living in the South in North Carolina and still being able to thrive because my parents have instilled a lot of tools and resources and values that regardless of where I am in this world, I've been equipped with different knowledge to be the best person that I can be. So I'd say I learned three things. Number one, I learned to um, navigate ambiguity and be agile, right? This is all about the power of the growth mindset. So in every circumstance where I knew that I was going to try something new, move somewhere new, have to meet someone new, I went in with the mindset that this might actually be the next best thing.
Mm.
And how beautiful is it to be able to experience new things, new cultures, new foods, new environments. And at a very young age, I adopted that mindset. The second thing that I say that I learned as being a part of a military family and household is that I also learned what it meant to be a part of something that was bigger than myself,
Mm.
right? Every man and woman and other person that's in the military understand that they have to serve a higher purpose, regardless of what their role is. And that's how I also carry myself through this world, knowing that I I play a role in a bigger purpose, and that's led me to live a more purpose-driven life that's in service to others. And then, as I've alluded to, I've also learned the importance of embracing diverse communities and cultures and customs. So I lived quite a bit of my life in the military community and military housing. And as you can imagine, I was exposed to people of different race, creeds, ethnicities. And it was just such a beautiful thing to be in that space where I got to learn about different ways of living at a very young age. So I'd say those are the three things that I learned. And I have to give a lot of credit to both of my parents, again, for all of the sacrifice, everything that they did to put the food on the table and keep the lights on, but also to serve this country and to keep us all safe.
Mm. I'll say I received that, and I'll say that because my parents weren't military, but we moved around a lot growing up, and it gave, much to your point, an opportunity to experience a lot of different cultures, people, races, ethnicities, and just be in different environments. And when you think about, as you kind of alluded to, the service, being a servant leader, being somebody who wants to be impactful to their community, these are all things, especially as you talk to your story, that I can relate to. So thank you for sharing that.
No, I appreciate it. I know we connect quite a bit on that piece. And I think, again, sometimes it's difficult to articulate like how profound it is to have to get up and move and uproot and do it all over again. But knowing that once you've done that and once you've had that transformative change, every time it gets just a little bit easier.
Hmm, that's real.
I got a question for you. So being that you was raised in a military household and within a military family, you were not persuaded or inspired or shall I say motivated or encouraged to go into the military?
My parents, thankfully, have always sort of cultivated whatever interest I had. Obviously, coming from a family of long line of men and women in the military, that was always there. And I don't know what it was, but at a young age, I always felt like a pioneer and I kind of wanted to go against the grain.
Mm.
I asked a lot of questions like, why is it that nobody in the family has gone to college yet? Or why is it that why is it that no one's working in technology? Or why is it that we only pursue these same career paths and not ask the question, right? And so as a curious kid, I naturally wanted to do the things that I had never been done. Again, I was the first to move away from home and move to the Bay Area because I wanted to be closer to where the technology was at. First to get into corporate America, which that in it of itself is its own world. And then to take that a step further, first to go into tech, right? So it's just a bunch of pivotal moments. But to answer your question, I never felt pressured. My family was always supportive of my goals and aspirations. And I'm grateful for that because I think, especially when it comes to child development, oftentimes it's, the parents have done one thing and they've done it very well. And then it's like the rite of passage, like, okay, now you have to be the legacy
Mhm.
child that does it. And again, I feel grateful that my parents provided that space for me to really explore the world for all that it has to offer.
Mm.
Mm.
Hey, that's what's
You
up.
thought of have you ever thought of the military?
Me, so I come from a military family as well, and so my grandmother, she had 10 kids, and out of the 10, it was six boys, and out of the six boys, I want to say one, two, three, four. Four of them went to the military, and they made great careers out of it, retired and living their best lives now. But that was not something that I was inspired to do. And so I was kind of like you, similarly,
Yeah.
in a way where, I was adamant that I was going to be the trailblazer to whatever career path that I so choose. And I'm not go along to get along. So yeah, we share some interests right there. And I was just curious because sometimes people oftentimes are inspired, especially if they come from a military background as yourself. So that was.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it wasn't so much the military pressure, but I identify as Afro-Latino.
Hmm.
So half Black, half Mexican, and
Hmm.
I do feel like where I did feel some tug and pull is that, on the Latino side is very communal. It's very about once you hit a certain age, you work and then you provide for the family.
Hmm.
Again, I wanted to challenge the status quo and say, well, why? Like, why can't we move away? Why can't we try something new? And as a result of that, have a different outcome for the family. And you'll hear me say the word change the narrative quite a bit. And I've truly felt that deeply ingrained in who I am and what I feel like my calling is for my family.
Hmm. Mm. I want to add to that and ask a follow-up question, Jerome, because you mentioned kind of being the change. You mentioned kind of being the first, right? And I wonder, as we read through your bio and as we heard a little bit about your story, you've been at the focal point of a lot of great things that are going on in the technology space. And so I'm wondering, through that, as you look and reflect back at your childhood, was there a pivotal moment or was there something that happened in your childhood that shaped you to not only pursue technology, but as you start thinking about the things that you're involved in with First Tech Fund, the impact that you're having on your community? Like, I know that there was a seed planted. I'm curious where that began for you.
Yeah, I'd say there were three pivotal moments. One, I'm gonna take y'all way back. The first was in the fifth grade, the Rotary Camp Enterprise. There was a field trip that I went on to Genentech, which is a biotech company in San Diego. It's pretty prevalent. And I still remember getting on that yellow bus and driving 40 minutes away from Southeast San Diego where I lived. And I remember getting to like these concrete buildings with all this glass and all these people wearing really fancy clothes. And to make a long story short, I remember walking into this environment and seeing people in white lab coats and thinking like, why haven't I seen someone like this before? Like, this is cool. They're talking about technology and advancements and science, and it all felt so foreign, but it felt familiar, if that makes sense. So that was the first seed that was ever planted where I was exposed to something different. The second is actually related to my mom. She always knew that I had a knack for technology and video games and STEM and all this other stuff. And I remember at one point in high school, I just remember a lot of my peers having laptops and having just these different resources and asking my mom, like, hey, mom, like, I can only really do my homework if I'm at school or I have to go to the library. Like, can I get a laptop? Like, I'm willing to work or do whatever. And we had a conversation, and it was a big topic of conversation in my family because this laptop provided access to a lot of things, right? And there's always this fear of the unknown. And there were certain family members that felt like, oh, you might want to be careful. There may be people that may want to talk to him inappropriately, and he's still a young man. But my mom saw past that, and I'm so grateful for that big brown Sony Vaio that she bought me that was louder than life. And that one piece of technology, I would say, I'd go as far as say altered the trajectory and course of my life, right? It provided me access to do my common apps and SAT prep and all the stuff from the comfort of my home. And ultimately, it led me down this path to get even closer to technology. So that was the second. And then the last experience that I'll share that's not quite in my childhood, but in my adulthood, while I was at Santa Clara University, I did what most people do and go to the career fair and talk to all the different employers and see what they're about. And I remember coming across Cisco's booth and talking to one of the employees, and the person kept saying, "The Internet of Everything, the Internet of Everything, the Internet of Everything is going to connect the world." And I remember that night looking into the Internet of Everything campaign that Cisco had going on, and probably like the 2012 time, 2013. And the whole idea was that the internet was now going to connect devices, communities, households, and overall things. And it was fundamentally going to change the way that we work, live, play, and learn. And it's almost as if the light bulb went off in my head of like, that's it. I want to be at that place because I know how pervasive the internet will be. And I know that it has the potential to impact billions of lives. So I would say those are the three experiences. Genentech, my mom getting me the laptop, and then finally learning all about the Internet of Everything.
I'm digesting because there's a lot to unpack there. When you think about the actual tech piece of it, because I know that you are actively involved with a number of things at Cisco, right? When you think about that experience and you think about all the things that have kind of led you to this point, like how would you say it's helping shape some of the things that you're now doing at Cisco, whether it's internal initiatives or even things that you're doing with First Tech Fund? Because I know that group is responsible for ensuring you're connecting the unconnected. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so first off, I'll say like when I was selecting a company to work for, it was super important to have my values aligned. And
Mm,
uh, at the time, Cisco's mantra was changing the way that we work, live, play, and learn. And today it's powering an inclusive future for all. And I think you can sort of see the theme and the trend that there's a dual path, one about technology, but one about impacting lives and community. So as I think about my life journey and my life path, I know what it's like to be a part of a underrepresented, marginalized community that lacks resources, right? And so in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, what are ways that I can continue to pull up my community and our communities up together to bridge the digital divide? Because I know what it's like on the other side to be disconnected. I know what it's like on the other side to want more resources and want that opportunity. And finally, I also know what it's like to have someone pull you up, breathe life into you, and open up
mm,
a door that you never saw possible. So, do I think that my experiences from the past influence where I'm at now and the initiatives that I'm a part of? 100%. They're totally aligned. I think it's if I can't make a direct connection between what I'm doing and how it impacts community, it's very difficult for me to participate.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
so, I mean, whether it's the work that you described, Josh, in the past, working with the United Nations Global Compact and really thinking about how do we connect the next billion users to the internet, specifically focusing on marginalized communities, or some of the work that I'm driving with First Tech Fund as the chair of that organization. And happy to talk about that more in a moment, but really helping the next generation youth to see, believe, and work towards that dream and aspiration that they would like to get, even if they do come from a similar community that's underserved, under-resourced, and sometimes just written off as not going to surmount to something, right? So I feel as though I'm the type of person that I look past that and see the person for who they are at face value and help lift them up and empower them
mm,
for the next best opportunity.
mm. Wow, that's real, man. I appreciate you for sharing that. It was one thing that I highlight from your story that you just shared is one of the growth mindset that you had and was developed at a very tender age is what I'm assuming based on your story. But I wonder, were there any influential people along the way? I know you mentioned your parents, and I'm sure there were friends, and there were also other influential individuals. But were there people in your corner rooting for you or supporting you and saying, hey, I guess talk to us about your mentorship and what that looked like, and also a little bit how you are paving it forward for other people as well.
Yeah, so from a mentorship perspective, in my life, I've always had what I call a board of directors.
Hmm.
So folks that are either skilled or are in a position that I'm interested in, or just overall see me as a champion.
Hmm.
So to answer your question, I would say in my life, there's three people that are immediately coming to mind. In the fifth grade, I had Mr. Alcorn, who pulled me aside right before I graduated, and said, Jerome, there's something different about you and you're special, and I want you to go down a different path. I mean, imagine hearing that as a fifth grader, right? Like, I'm thinking, what's different? Am I weird? Like, what's going on? And Mr. Alcorn was like, no, you're different. You think differently, you learn differently, and that's okay. And I want to help you um, go down a different path. So Mr. Alcorn nominated me for a public charter school in San Diego that was tailored for first generation Black and Brown and Asian students who would go on to become the first in their family to go to college. And Mr. Alcorn, he didn't only nominate me, but he met with my mom. He helped us write essays. He helped advocate on my behalf and got the principal to sign my application. And again, that was a moment where someone mentored, if not sponsored me for something that I didn't even know existed. So that was mentor number one. Mentor number two, that I have to give a lot of credit to, who just spent countless hours motivating, empowering, challenging me. I'd say Miss Lisa Hawk at the Proy School at UCSD, so the middle school and high school charter school that I'm talking about. She was my advisor for 7 years and saw me mature from a young adolescent to a young adult who was getting ready to go to college for the first time. And she did this for almost 30 other students and met with us on a weekly basis, asked us how we were doing, asked us about what our aspirations were, and just constantly reminded us why we were working towards what we were working towards. So that's the second person. And then in my adult life, I will give a shout out to Jill Shaul. She is a sponsor who helped me convert, from a specialist to a first-time manager at Cisco. She's someone who kept me hopeful during times where I felt like I was experiencing a great deal of challenge in my career. She was someone who helped me see the bigger picture and make that connection to how my work aligned to a bigger impact. And we actually had some amazing work that we did for Cisco and trying to figure out how do we make it the best place to work for the company. And till this day, I mean, Cisco's been nominated the best place to work for 3 years and counting. And so I know the power of mentors and sponsors. A mentor will spend time with you, will coach you, will um, pick up that phone call at any time of the day. And that sponsor, whether you're in the room or not, will open up that door that you didn't even know was there, but constantly has you on their mind.
Mm.
And I'll leave you with one thing as it pertains to mentors and sponsors. According to Cisco's multiplier effect, 1 in 5 Caucasian men have a sponsor, 1 in 8 women have a sponsor. And the piece that's more alarming for me is that 1 in 12 minorities have a sponsor. So, what does that mean? That means that at times it can be a little bit more difficult to find those doors that have yet to be opened.
Mhm.
And we have the responsibility, regardless of what table we're at, to open up that door for other people who look like us, who speak
Mhm.
like us, who come from similar backgrounds. And so I'm a huge advocate for sponsorship. And one final plug to the multiplier effect. As a matter of fact, I actually signed the pledge for Josh here to be his lifelong mentor slash sponsor as part of the multiplier effect, which essentially you agree to be a part of that person's life through the course of their career and help them in any way that they see fit. And the only thing that's asked of that person is to pay it forward and have someone else sign the pledge and become their mentor slash sponsor.
Mm. I can attest to the mentorship. And the beauty in having both of y'all here is I look up to both of y'all. And so I know you had signed the pledge, but I know between both of y'all, like y'all are not only brothers for me, big brothers for me, but also when it does come to when you think about the impact and paving it forward, that's something that I try and live by day to day. So not only thank you for your answer, Jerome, but just from me to both of y'all, thank you. Because I know that to the stats that you just pointed out, not everybody has that opportunity. And I've been blessed and fortunate to have y'all in my life. And hopefully I'm doing the same to pave it forward and grow and bring that statistic, change the direction in which it's in right now.
Mhm. And I can attest to that. I mean, it's about reverse mentorship, and you do it in so many ways without even trying. So I thank you as well.
I appreciate it. Mike, you look like you wanted to say something, man. I don't want to cut you
Nah,
off.
I was just nah, I was just taking it in, man. It's great to hear from a different perspective on how an individual is navigating their life, but not only their life, but their personal life, but being inspired by others, and talk about weak ties and strong ties. And so I appreciate you for sharing that information.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. So you kind of talked a little bit about First Tech Fund, and we wanna pivot the conversation on more what you got going on in the community. And so as you talked about this digital divide, to my knowledge, that's the whole basis of the organization. So let us know what's going on with the organization, and then more importantly, the impact that y'all are trying to make. Because as we know, we've seen AI blow up over the last year. We've seen and from I got my first smartphone when I was in college, and now we've seen phones
Pause,
change.
really?
Yeah, man, I didn't get my iPhone until I was I didn't listen. As the story
Oh
holds, and I know my
man.
parents gonna hear, my dad didn't let me. He had his iPhone. Everybody in my class wanted an iPhone. I didn't get an iPhone. He said,
Wow.
when you want one, you can go buy it. And I got it right
Yo,
before I went to
so you
school.
were you were at wow. So
Yeah.
you came to college with an Android?
No, I came to college. No, see, what we're not gonna do is go that route.
You guys are really
I
showing your age, though.
Come on
Right,
now.
right.
No. So I had
Oh, no, you had one of those flip phones.
I
No,
had a flip
Nokia?
and a slide. I had a flip
Nokia?
and a slide
Oh, you had a sidekick.
up until I graduated high school. And then I got the iPhone right before I got to college. But that's besides the point.
Not the sidekick.
Let me bring us back in. But Jerome, man, tell us a little bit more about First Tech Fund and the impact that y'all got going on.
Y'all talk about
Uh,
iPhone. I had a flip phone that had a T9, and you had to tap the same button just to
Hey,
get.
I had that
Hey,
little. I'm telling you, man. I had the first camera phone that came out was with Altel, and then I had that phone where it was like very standard. The only game that you had up there was Snake, and bro, man,
you
but
break the
I ain't
high
had that.
score.
I didn't have that going into college though. No, I definitely had like an iPhone like 5, 6 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you this. This is all connected, right? I told you the story about how my mom got me my first laptop and how profound that moment was, and how special was it to find an organization whose sole purpose was to bridge the digital divide, right? By providing students with a laptop, a hotspot, mentorship, and training and programming. Um, in New York, in the boroughs where there was the most need for connectivity. And, First Tech Fund was born during the pandemic, right? When connectivity was almost synonymous with the basic human need, right? Like now you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of students that now were unable to connect to their classroom, to their professor, to their family. And how special is it to have found an organization that provided that connectivity? And more importantly than that, regardless of people's socioeconomic status, background, religion, um, to really be that catalyst for change for these students to see something different than what they've been exposed to.
Mhm.
And so early on, while I was doing my fellowship with the United Nations focused on connecting the next billion users, it just felt like a match made in heaven to connect students in our own backyard, right? Like not thinking that it has to be this huge program, but knowing that there's still students that were going to the local McDonald's or local Starbucks to use the free Wi-Fi to get their homework done. And I kept going back to my experience that was almost 15, 20 years back. And students till this day were still experiencing what I was experiencing at one point.
Mhm.
And so I naturally felt very connected to the cause. Shout out to Josue de Paz and Hannah Seligman for founding this organization during a time that was just very tumultuous. It was very difficult to start a nonprofit at that time and to ask people for money, for students. And to this date, First Tech Fund has supported over 310 plus students. We've distributed over 120 plus laptops and then provided more than, I would argue, over 100 plus hours of training for a lot of these students in the cohorts. If that's not enough, a lot of our students have gotten into some incredible schools. I'm just going to read off a few. We've got Carnegie Mellon, Hunter, University of Virginia, Temple, University of Albany, Princeton University. We also have QuestBridge scholars, Hispanic Scholarship Fund scholars, PASE scholars, and many, many more. And now we're starting to see where students are now being placed into internships for their first corporate jobs. So if you think about it, I mean, First Tech Fund has been a blessing for hundreds of students, and I know that there will be more to come and there's more work that has to be done. But again, being a part of a community that is thinking about our most vulnerable populations is something that's near and dear to my heart.
Mhm. I respect that. I respect that. One question I do have for you, providing those opportunities, I know it comes with a sense of gratitude, and I'm sure the families in those communities appreciate the work that First Tech Fund, yeah, that y'all do for them. But one question I do have, and feel free to answer in any way that you feel is appropriate. How do y'all ensure the accountability with that as it relates to h- how do y'all go about distributing the wealth? What is that process like? And because oftentimes you have people that want to do the great work that you're doing. I'm sure someone will be inspired by this episode and say, "Hey, I want to do something similar to that." So, can you talk to us about that? Because I think sometimes people hear the good thing, and then they see it as he went from A to Z. It's just like an overnight someone like you became famous overnight, and that's not necessarily the case. So I wonder if you can talk to us about that experience. How do y'all select students? How do one get to the point where they're able to found their own organization and be able to provide those opportunities, and not necessarily similar to you, but similar to whatever they envision?
Yeah, so I'll start with the organization piece, and then I'll speak from it. I'll speak from the standpoint of joining a board of directors to be able to
Mm.
make an impact in that way. I can't take credit for founding First Tech Fund. That's all Josue and Hana, and very grateful for that. But I would say, once I reached the point where I felt like I knew enough about the severity of a problem
Hmm.
that I was deeply invested in, deeply interested in solving for. And once I had sort of that North Star of, okay, I know for a fact I'm very passionate about closing the digital divide and reducing those haves and have-nots.
Hmm.
Then I kind of, number one, I prayed on it. So I am a man of faith. I prayed on it that the right opportunity would present itself. And then number two, I talked to people and I put it out
Hmm.
there that, hey, I am looking for opportunities to serve on a board that are in these particular spaces. And then number three, it was just one of those moments where, I was sifting through LinkedIn, and sure enough, I saw Josue doing an interview in Spanish talking about how he was providing a laptop, a hotspot, and basically an opportunity for students to thrive. And it was almost one of those gifts from God's moment, like, man, like I've been praying on this and this is it. And then the last piece that I'll call out is like when we have those moments, we got to act on it because all too often it's like, oh, okay, that's great. I'll put it in my back pocket and think about it. But there's an element of taking action and taking steps towards that goal. So
Hmm.
what did I do? I reached out to Josue. Um, and long story short, the reason why I knew him was because I was his orientation leader at Santa Clara. And so talk about the world being a small place. So I reached out to him and I said, what is it that you need? I will talk to students, I will read applications, I will, whatever it is that you need, like I would love to contribute. This is some of the research I have going on. This is how I can see myself contributing. But at the end of the day, I'm so passionate about this cause, I'm willing to do anything that you need to be in service of you and the community. So that's how I landed on the board. And, after a year's worth of work, I was asked to be the chairman, and I've been doing that for the last 3 years and really helping the organization think strategically about how we want to move long term. Then to the second part of your question about students and how do we distribute that wealth, we have a pretty, it's becoming a robust process as to how we vet for the students. So we asked them to write an essay and we asked them standard questions like, do you have access to a laptop? Do you have reliable internet? Um, what we ask about, family income. We ask where specifically they live. And then the most important piece that we ask is, with this technology, what is your goal with it and how will you use it and pay it forward in the future?
Hmm.
Right. And so we have hundreds of applications that come in, and part of our role is to read them. And you can see the difference between someone who has that, I call it like that grit or like that, what's the word I want to use? Who want to get it, right? Like, and who's authentic in the reason as to why they want these resources. For some people, it's, well, yes, it's for me, but I also want my family to benefit from it because my whole household doesn't have one. And then you have other students that, want to cure cancer and want to become the first lawyer, the first doctor, the first electrician, or whatever the profession is in their family, as long as their why is real and we can see that they would use it for good, more often than not, they get into the program.
Hmm.
So that's how we get them in. And then once they're in, we have alumni cohorts and we have the students talk to the previous year students, and it's just a never-ending cycle. And for me, it was actually exciting that at some point I had the opportunity to interview one of our first Tech Fund fellows for an internship that we were hosting at Cisco. So you kind of see how it all comes together and how students who once didn't have a network now have this extensive network of professionals and people who look like them who want to see them thrive.
Hmm.
Mm.
That's what's up. I love that. That's what's up. So how can individuals, get plugged in to the First Tech Fund? I know you mentioned the Barrows of New York, but is that something that's strictly for New York, or is that something that's nationwide? What does that look like? And also,
Yes,
how can people contribute? Because we have people that are willing to give and support as well.
absolutely. So the first way you can find First Tech Fund is firsttechfund.com.
Mm.
We also have a huge IG presence, so you can check us out on firsttechfund.com or First Tech Fund. And you can also see the impact that we have in the community, some of the programming that we have for students, and other ways to connect. I would say if people want to get involved, they can reach out to the leadership team, they can reach out to me and inquire as to the best way. We do have a board of directors, we have a junior board as well, and we also, from time to time, hire for full-time positions in New York. And to your question, it is specific to New York at the
Mhm.
moment, but the hope and the aspiration is to expand into other states that also need this type of programming. If people want to donate and they feel so inclined, you can also do that on our website, or you can reach out to a board member, which can be found on the site, and or you can donate through your local company and put in a donation for a match. We are a 501(c)(3) organization, so it is match eligible as well to double your impact.
Cool,
Y'all
cool.
tap in with them, come
Sure.
in, check them out, donate, read up on them, hear the stories. Definitely tap in. Jerome, we want to be respectful of your time, man. But what we want to do is we kind of wrap up. You, I know legacy is something that's important to you. And as you talked throughout your story today, you talked about the impact that your parents had on you, not only just from being a military kid, but also that first laptop, and then being a first. And now you are in a position where you are trying to impact and make sure that there are many of other students or many other folks who are coming up who may be first, but they're paving it forward. So our question to you is, when you think about your legacy, what is the impact that you are striving to have when it's all said and done and you rest in your head at night? What is it that you want to leave behind?
I'll keep it consistent with what I've been sharing throughout this whole call. I mean, when it's said and done, my hope and my aspiration for the world is that we will continue to use technology for good and that it levels the playing field and it serves as an equalizer. I think with what we're seeing right now, and I know we didn't talk too much about AI, but there are major economic opportunities with AI. I mean, McKinsey is saying right now that AI has the potential to generate, I think it's 4.4 trillion dollars of economic value. And then the number that concerns me is that on an annual basis, Black and Brown communities may lose out on $43 billion on an annual basis. And that's just as a result of not interacting with the technology, not using it. And so I think part of my calling in this life is to constantly always think about our most vulnerable populations, be that bridge between the haves and have-nots, and really think about how can we use these emerging technologies for good, and use them in such a way that advances life for everybody, right? Not just the folks that work in tech that are building it, but the students that live wherever in the world and come from vulnerable populations. And my hope is that over the course of my life that I continue to plant that seed like Mr. Alcorn or like Lisa Hack or like Jill Shaul, so that they can see that even if they don't see something in their direct community, anything is possible as long as we maintain that growth mindset. We're willing to change the narrative and willing to try something new, even if it's uncomfortable. So that's what I would say is my legacy, is to be someone who inspires, that changes the narrative, and that continues to pull up other people, regardless of their circumstance or what they look like.
Mm. I received that. I received that in a way where it kind of brings us to our next point before we close. So, we started a thing to kind of I hope this question wasn't shared with you, but we want to be able to kind of see how people think and process, and but also just get a different side of the perspectives that as it relates to your professional and also personal career. So the question is, would you rather continually embrace challenges and embrace challenges and potential setbacks, or would you rather consistently avoid challenges to maintain a more predictable and comfortable life?
Oh, challenges and setbacks, 100%.
All right, tell us more.
I mean, what would life be in my mind if life were so linear? And I think that with challenges and setbacks, it creates so many more opportunities for growth. And I think that in my life, I've learned the most when I've been the most challenged, when I'm presented with you'll hear the term BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, where, the challenge is so big that it has to be broken down into smaller pieces. And just naturally, I don't know what it is about me or my DNA or what, but I naturally gravitate towards challenge. I feel as though I'm a bit hardwired to want to grow at um a very rapid pace, and I'm naturally very inquisitive and curious. And so much so that even at a young age, my dad was like, "Why you ask so many, what questions?" And so again, that comes with embracing more of that growth mindset. And so challenges and setbacks, 100%.
And I think that's I echo that. Gator, what's your thoughts on
Shoot, I think that's the mic drop,
it?
man.
That's
I think that I would agree with you, Jerome. I think challenges not only bring forth opportunity, but I think that, and I read a quote the other day that was around like those moments that are meant to be difficult, that are meant to kind of put a little bit of pressure on us, give us an opportunity to see the many different aspects of ourselves that we wouldn't traditionally see at the surface. And
Mhm.
so when I think about that, and you think about all the things, and we can take the Iron Man for example. You don't know what is going to happen on race day. You don't know what the weather is going to be like. You may have everything in plan. You may have everything planned from nutrition. This is what I can run. This is how I know I can perform on the course. But I know, having gone through quite a few of these, all too often, you have to pivot.
hmm
And 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 sometimes the things that we think in life that are going to go our way, as I like to say, big homie got a different agenda, and you've got to be able to navigate that. And so I'm like you, Jerome, and I think, Mike, you would feel the same way. Sometimes it's hard to be one of the tough soldiers that God got you aligned to, but and sometimes you don't want to go through that storm, but you come out better at the end, knowing that you either gave it all you had or you experienced something that wasn't traditionally the thing that you thought you'd go through. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Josh. And I love the analogy of the Iron Man. And one last thing that I'll add with challenges and setbacks, in the context of an Iron Man, I think it's really easy to go in thinking that you could be self-coached and figure it out.
Hmm.
But with challenges and setbacks, it also creates an opportunity to be coached and to be mentored and to be someone who's willing to accept support and help. I mean, I know I've come to you, Josh, for countless hours to talk through equipment, through nutrition, through training plans. We've trained together. And I
Hmm.
think, how special is that to have a challenge or an obstacle and learn that it's okay to um, take on other people who have more knowledge to coach you through that, right? I go back to that board of directors.
Yeah,
So I think in addition to taking on those challenges and having to be agile and navigate them, it also opens up another door to rely on community and on people to help you cross that bridge or to help you run across that red carpet.
for sure. For sure. Well, I think that's the mic drop moment, man. I don't know if there's anything else to add, but what we do want to do, Jerome, is first off say thank you. Uh, we know you got a lot going on, so thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in, dropping some gems, and sharing your story with the community. But also want to add, I know we gave a little bit of a shameless plug with First Tech Fund, but if folks take a listen to this episode and they want to connect with you, what is the best way that folks can get in contact with you?
So I'll follow your lead, Josh. Before I leave all of you and put in my plug, I also want to extend my gratitude and say thank you to both of you for one, running this program and providing a platform to spread even more gems and to amplify people's voices and empower the community. So thank you, Josh and Mike, for the opportunity to be here and spend the evening with both of you. If people would like to follow up with me, they can follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn at Jerome J. Sanders, on Twitter at Jerome J. Sanders. And if you want to follow me on IG, you can also follow me at Jerome J. Sanders. It's pretty consistent across the board.
There you go. There you go. Y'all tap in with them, tap in with Jerome, tap in with First Tech Fund. But again, Jerome, thank you for being here with us today. And to wrap up, I would say there was a common theme today that you touched on. I know you had mentioned you were first. And you also mentioned the importance of mentorship and being agile. And so what we want to leave our audience here with today is, as you're going through your own process and you're trying to just figure life out, a few things. One, it's okay to lean on somebody or find somebody who's going to help point you in the right direction. Two, you're always going to be a life learner, and be willing to accept and learn from others. It can be somebody from a child all the way to an adult. And then I would say the third thing is, as we kind of wrap up, is it's okay to go through challenges and not expect the outcome or know what the outcome is, but know that as you're navigating these waters and you're growing, at the end of the day, these moments that you go through are going to shape you for the better as you continue to navigate your journey. And so again, Jerome, thank you for being here with us today. And as we always say, it's the power of a growth mindset, and it always starts with you.